Number 1. There are inconsistent differences or jumps between each rating on the 1 to 10 look scale. So for the 1 to 10 look scale that we have here that everyone is familiar with, in theory, the difference between each number should be the same. So roughly 10% between 1 and 2, 10% between 2 and 3, and so on and so forth. But in reality, I would say the differences between each number look something more like this. So for some numbers, there's no difference between each one, while for other numbers, there's massive differences. To explain this further, the way I see this is that if you're 1 to 3 in looks, then it's pretty much all of the same thing. You're borderline subhuman at this point. 3, 2 and 1 pretty much all mean the same thing, that nobody's going to find you good looking. Then between 3 and 4 there's a little difference. So at this point you're still below average, you're still unattractive. And in fact everyone in this 1 to 4 range is going to be labelled as unattractive. But then the difference between 4 and 5, we have a massive gap. So this is the first rating where you'll step into that average territory. And I would say most people fall into this 5 out of 10 average looking category. These are just your everyday, normal looking people. There's nothing that particularly stands out that's grossly unattractive, but they're not exactly going to be called good looking either. And then between 5 and 6 there's another little gap, so this is just climbing up the average looking scale, and the same goes for the difference between a 6 and a 7. All of these men fall into that average looking, everyday kind of person. And in fact, I would say it's around the 6 to 6.5 mark where women start to become attracted to men. And that's where you might find they would start telling you that you have nice features and you're quite good looking. The difference between 7 and 8, however, is another massive gap. This is your Chad tier of looks. And then of course, once you reach 8, there's not really much room for improvement. 8, 9 and 10 all mean the same thing pretty much. Just like 1, 2 and 3. So this is my point, and this is my first criticism of the 1 to 10 scale. That the differences between each number aren't evenly distributed. And in fact, they might as well just reduce it to the 3 to 8 scale. Reason number 2 I don't like the 1 to 10 scale. Virtue signalling. And this is exactly what it says on the tin. And it's this idea that people, especially women, will say different numbers than to what they are thinking in their minds. And this is usually going to be done in order to be polite and to not hurt anyone's feelings. So to explain my point further, if you're one of these men and you ask a woman, how attractive am I? She will likely say one of these things. There's nothing wrong with you. I have a friend that will find you really attractive, or oh, you're just not my type, and so on and so forth. And as we all know, if a woman says that you're not my type, then that is just code for saying that you're not attractive. It's the politest way of saying that you are below average. So women will say these things, and if you ask them how attractive you are out of 10, they will likely give you a 6 or a 7. So they'll bump you up by a couple of points. Secondly, another point that CBP brought up in one of his recent videos is that women can't lie too much. They can't rate any of these men an 8, 9 or a 10 because otherwise they will know that the woman is lying to them. However, boosting the rating by 2 to 3 points is enough to avoid hurting the man's feelings, but at the same time won't get suspected of lying. So when a woman virtue signals, these are the things that she will say. But on the inside, what she will be thinking is that he's unattractive and he's about a 3 to 4 in terms of looks. So this is my second criticism of the 1 to 10 scale. It has this problem of virtue signalling. And if you're watching this video right now and you're not 100% sure just where you fall on the look scale, then I would advise you to go onto this website called Photofeeler. And it allows you to upload pictures of yourself to be rated out of 10 by other people. And the way it works is that you have to give votes to get votes. So if you vote on 10 other random people's profiles, then you'll get 10 votes on your profile. And this is good for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's an easy and quick way to get lots of ratings with a high sample size, so you're going to get reliable numbers. And secondly, this idea of virtue signalling is largely removed. The ratings are anonymous, so there is no reason for anyone to lie when given these ratings. And the last point I want to make on this before moving on to the next one is that the reason why people virtue signal, especially women, is because in the prehistoric times, from an evolutionary perspective, it is going to be biologically advantageous for women to virtue signal. She's not going to harshly reject a male member of the tribe, as he might get aggressive, he might harm her, he might threaten her. So instead, for the sake of her own safety, she will advocate for virtue signalling instead. Now I've got 2 of the reasons out of the way, I'd now like to take this opportunity to ask you to press the like button and leave any thoughts you have so far in the comment section below. Carrying on with the analysis. Number 3. Highly relevant contextual info is excluded from the final rating. So in my opinion, when it comes to the 1 to 10 scale, you will get 3 ratings. So obviously the one on the left that I've just spoken about, you will have your virtual signal rating, and this will be 2 to 3 points higher than your actual face rating. So women might tell this man that he's a 7 out of 10. And as already stated, the main purpose of this is to avoid hurting the man's feelings. The second rating you'll get is your face rating, and this measures your face only. That's the key piece of information, it only measures your facial attractiveness. So this man's actual face rating is a 5 out of 10. And then the third rating is your SMV rating, or what I like to call it is your Tinder rating. So this will factor in things like height. So this man is a 5, but he'll be a 3 out of 10 if he's 5'4" in terms of height. It will factor in the person's build, body, frame. And these things can work both ways. So if this man is over 6 foot and he has a gym body, then he might go up to a 6, maybe even a 7. It will factor in JBW, which I hope everyone knows what I'm referring to there. And that's all I'm going to say on this before I risk YouTube banning me out of existence. It will factor in your location in the world. Men will have varying amounts of SMV depending where they live, and that will show in their Tinder matches. And lastly, arguably the most important one, is age. So this man, facially, he's very attractive, easily a 7 out of 10 I would say. But because of the fact he is old alone, automatically means his SMV is sub 5. Women in the 20 to 29 range won't even have this man's age in their age bracket for their settings. And if he dared approach a young girl in a club, bar or street, then it's going to be considered nothing else but creepy. And this is purely because of the fact he is old. This is what I mean when I say that other relevant pieces of information are left out of the face rating. And this concept doesn't just apply to men, it applies to women as well. So for this woman, you might rate her a 7 or maybe even pushing 8 out of 10 in the face. But as soon as you show the bottom half of the photo and you find out she's a single mother, her SMV automatically drops by 3 points. For all women, as soon as you have a child, your SMV pretty much automatically drops by 3 points. And what's hilarious is that if you go onto any online dating apps, you will see women like this who still show the same standards that they had before they had their child written in their bio. They will still be demanding people on their looks level or above, which is just absurd. No man wants to raise another man's child. It's as simple as that. And if he does, it's because he has no other options, not because he chose to. So this is my third criticism of the 1 to 10 look scale, that there are pretty much 3 different ratings that you will expect to hear, and each of these ratings can be wildly different depending on the circumstance. Reason number 4, subjectivity. And this goes without saying. There's no question that women are going to have disagreements when it comes to rating men. And I would say the biggest disagreement amongst women when it comes to subjectiveness is how masculine they would want their man to be. So if we take a look at this graph, where we have masculinity on the bottom, and the 1 to 10 look scale on the y-axis. So the further left you go on the graph, the more feminine you will appear, while the further right on the graph is the more masculine. And both of these two men are on either end of the extreme, and because of that, they have very low looks ratings. For these men, however, they're higher up on the look scale. So pretty boys are going to be slightly feminized, but they're still very attractive and they're high up on the look scale. Meanwhile, on the other side, you have your gym rats, testosterone junkies, that are a lot more masculine, and they're still fairly high up on the look scale. But the most ideal would be this Chad type, which most women would consider the perfect blend between femininity and masculinity. So the end result will end up looking something like this, our classic bell curve shape, with the ideal amount of masculinity falling somewhere in the middle. However, that said, if a woman has a preference for pretty boys, then she is going to rate this man as the highest, she likes the more feminine type, and she will rate him a 10 out of 10. Meanwhile, the Chad will be only rated an 8. And that's an important point to note, that the Chad will never fall below an 8, irrespective of the woman's preference. So quite clearly, when we put on our bell curve, it's clear to see that the hump has shifted left slightly to favour a more feminine appearance. Meanwhile, if a woman prefers more masculine men, she wants a strong and powerful protector, then she is going to favour this kind of man, and again, the hump is shifted right to favour more masculine men. However, most women, and I would say 90% of women, are going to have a preference that looks something like this. So the Chad in the middle, mostly masculine, but a little bit feminine, is going to be the most attractive. Reason 5, the ratings don't reflect your chances. So an 8 might not seem like much of a difference to a 7. A 7 might not seem like much of a difference to a 6, but the difference is massive. Every point of attractiveness you drop is going to make it exponentially harder to attract women. So much to the point that I would say it's 10 times difference between each rating. And I discussed this in depth in my previous video, so I'm not going to explain it again. However, I'd highly recommend you check this video out after finishing this one. It's a really good video, and the link will definitely be in the description box below. So those are the 5 reasons that I've come up with for why I dislike the 1 to 10 scale. For the last bit of this video, I'm going to explain what I think we should use instead of the 1 to 10 scale. You've probably heard of it before, the 3-tier scale of Chad, Normie and Sub 5. This is what I think we should use in place of the 1 to 10 scale. It makes so much more sense to me, and it's so easy to identify which category you fall in, dependent on the criteria and the treatment you get from other people. So firstly, if you fall into this Chad category, then you pretty much get intimacy on dial-up. If you're wondering where all the Tinder matches are going, this is where they are going. These are the men with all the options. These are the men that women are talking about when they say, oh, this guy I like, he doesn't text me back. And the key piece of treatment that these men will exclusively get as opposed to other tiers is that any negative personality traits will be seen as positives. So any red flags will be brushed aside or ignored, or potentially even seen as positives. So a couple of examples, they're really obvious. So for Chads only, if he is shy, then it will be perceived as cute in the eyes of women. If he is awkward, then it will be considered funny or adorable. Any of his bad jokes, and this is an important one, they will be voluntarily laughed at by women because they want to try to impress him, and so on and so forth. Only Chads get this kind of treatment, and the bottom line to sum up this kind of treatment is that I would say that women break rules for Chads. So the standards and preferences that they usually have, that they usually hold themselves to, they go straight out the window as soon as Chad comes along. Moving on to normie tier, and when they approach women, their usual response will be a soft rejection, so they will likely get friend-zoned. Or a girl will say, oh, my phone's dead, or I'm in a rush to work, whatever. So they'll get these soft, light-hearted rejections. And if you're normie tier, you can still be successful in attracting women, but you just need a couple of other things to bump yourself up. So that might be superior height, having a gym body, higher status, having good social circles, or sharing a lot of common interests with a woman. Or other things like you're her specific type, you have a lot of talents going for you, you have excellent pickup skills, a bit of luck maybe, and so on and so forth. So I would summarise the treatment that you get in this tier is that you'll have rules made for you. So women will break rules for Chad and they will make rules for you. Lastly, moving on to sub 5. And this is the point where you will get hard rejections. This is where women will get disgusted and offended if you dare approach them in public. They will call you a creep and tell you to get lost. Obviously a lot of women will still give you soft rejections because they don't want to appear heartless. But generally, you know you're in sub 5 when you get these hard rejections. And the kind of treatment you'll get at sub 5 is that any positives you have will be seen as negatives. And there's loads of examples for this. So if you have confidence as a sub 5, it will be perceived as arrogance. Any kind of intelligence that you have is geeky or nerdy. Having a gym body will be considered overcompensating. This is commonly known as gym selling, where a man has a subpar face on a ripped and lean body and it just doesn't work out, it doesn't look good at all. Lastly, if you try to compliment a woman or be kind to her, then it will be seen as inappropriate or creepy. And I laughed when I first saw this meme, and it pretty much just sums up that last point perfectly. That as a sub 5, any positives you have will be seen as negative. And the bottom line for this category is that you are pretty much just treated as subhuman. People will look down on you and they won't treat you as an equal. So this is what I think we should use instead of the 1 to 10 look scale. This way there is no arguments, it's so easy to identify which category you fall in, and it's based on the behaviour and treatment you receive from other people. Let me know if you have any thoughts in the comment section below, and if you haven't already, be sure to press the like button as it helps the YouTube algorithm.